Hello, Lothar here. This video is going to be on Resupply, and it's basically going to talk through this video is going to probably go to the first few hundred miles to get people off to a good start. Hopefully some of the suggestions I might make around certain resupply points, maybe some interesting town stops, yeah, it's one suggestion, or a series of suggestions. This is one set of views that I have. Please obviously look at different strategies because everyone hikes at different paces. People have different budgets, so they may want to do limit the number of town stops, or maybe, if they're an early March start date, they may want to take their time, in which case you want to maybe stop at all the towns. What I'm going to do is do a video where I'm just going to talk through the first sort of series of waypoints that I consider to be very important, and how I approach them, or how I might advise somebody to approach them. Hope it's useful. Right, let's move probably to here. So I'm going to have a list of basically the key milestones. So what I've got is I've basically got a book of just the simple mileages you have on far out of the key waypoints and towns. Now I tend to decide, as I've said in the previous video, I only stop at towns, or sorry, send boxes to towns where I'm prepared to stop. I know I'm going to stop, maybe do a zero or a near zero. And if I have to stay overnight because I've maybe missed the post office time, then it's in the location that's not too bad and there's things to do. So the key mileages I'm going to talk about are this one. I'm going to read it off the list here, and hopefully it will appear here somewhere in my video. CAMPO is obviously mile 0. Nice start, got a nice clean start. Lake Morena, mile 20. That's where people normally regroup after the first section. Maybe have a meal and make some quick decisions. Mount Laguna, mile 42. That's again another quick stop. Has some accommodations up there if you're looking to stop in Mount Laguna, but it's got limited. It's got some restaurants, but it's not a town. It's not you can get a basic resupply from the store. Then the big one is Scissors Crossing at mile 77, where you can access Julian, big town. Gear shop, 2 Foot Adventures, really helpful advice from basically everyone in the town knows PCT hikers, yeah, they're very, very welcoming, and it's a very popular stop. After Scissors Crossing, now one of the stops that people normally would go to would be a place called Montezuma Valley. I'm pretty certain that's either going to be either closed or very, very reduced service, certainly from a PCT hiker perspective. So I would look at Warner Springs as the next stop, and that's mile 110. And then the next one is going to be at Paradise Valley Cafe at 151.8, where you can access Idyllwild. Okay, then you go over Mount San Jacinto. The next stop for me would be, to consider, or the waypoint would be Cajon, which is also Banning. After that would be Big Bear. After that would be Cajon Junction. After that would be Wrightwood. Now, depending on the closures that around the recent fire, you would probably then go around and try and get to Acton, KOA. I need to check where the closure is, but let's factor it on the map at the moment. And then we've got Acton, KOA, Acton, and then Green Valley, which is a store, a small town just off the PCT, but I like, that's one of my favourite stops, even though it's probably not very well serviced by PCT hikers. Sorry, it's serviced well for the hikers, but it's not seen as a major stop. It's kind of it's a nice filling gap one for me. And then big one is then Hikertown, and then you've got Tehachapi. So that's what this video is going to focus on, and in the next video I will then focus on my approach after that up through the Sierra, and then basically sort of key sort of towns that I really focus on through Oregon, Northern California, Oregon and Washington, that may be of interest. This is just one view. You're going to hear differing views. This is obviously just take what's useful to you, and let's kick off. Now, you're at CAMPO, or you're gearing up. The next couple of weeks you're starting hiking. Now, if you're one of these people that loves to plan and has this idea that you want to do lots and lots of boxes, and they pre-pack and they, have a big pile of about 20 boxes, and you put breakfast, lunch, dinner 20 times over, whatever, that's going to fix you to a very specific schedule. I understand people who have very specific dietary requirements. They may need to do that. I would normally only personally work maybe 2 boxes ahead, maybe 3 at most. Because I like to be flexible. Plans may slightly change, and my appetite certainly will change through the course of the hike. So that's why I don't necessarily fix my dietary requirements literally from the start. But I do understand some people want to feel much more organised and send it to a specific town, and they're planning to stop there, and that's where the strategy works. As long as you're factoring in stops, if you're going to send lots of boxes ahead of you, and you're factoring in that, and you may be an early March starter and you need to take it very slowly, so you don't hit the Sierra too soon, so that can work. But I'm going to talk about strategies whereby, yeah, I'm working maybe 1 or 2 boxes ahead, maybe 3, and how I do a lot of my resupply on the trail as well. Okay, right, before the hike, there's one thing I would always do is check the San Jacinto trail report. First box I'm going to be considering is my snow gear, ice axe and microspikes to Paradise Valley Cafe. That's at mile 151.8. You could also send it to Idyllwild, the town that's you can hitch in from Paradise Valley Cafe to Idyllwild, and then you get the gear and then hitch back from Idyllwild to Paradise Valley Cafe. I choose to send it to Paradise Valley Cafe. The benefit of sending it to Idyllwild and doing the there and back to Paradise Valley Cafe is that if for any reason, maybe the snow's clear and you don't need it, because you've sent it to the post office at Idyllwild, you can then bounce it forward. Because Paradise Valley is basically a restaurant, it's not a post office. You can't bounce things from there. So I send it to Paradise Valley Cafe, pretty certain I'm going to be picking up my snow gear. Now, as I said before, every time I send a parcel, I always pack it out, up to the maximum weight. So I send my ice axe and snow gear, and I send some resupply items that gets me up and over San Jacinto. That's what I personally do. But snow gear is the first thing you've got to consider where you're going to send it, and the first choice would be Paradise Valley Cafe, and that would be before your hike. Now, actually, some people, if you're flying in, you could do that from CAMPO Post Office or San Diego Post Office. But anyway, that's worth considering. And the real, if you're in any doubt, look at the San Cajon trail report in advance. And yeah, it's a fair bet that snow gear will be needed there if you're planning to go up and over San Jacinto, certainly this year. It doesn't look at the moment like it's going to be heavy snow, but again, it can change. A storm front can come in. But first box, Paradise Valley Cafe, 151.8, snow gear and a few resupply items. Second box, now, because I'm looking at this town list here, I will talk you through why I don't need boxes here. Right, let's talk about if I was going as an average newbie kind of hiker, I would probably send a box to Warner Springs. Okay, because going from CAMPO to mile 20, that's what, maybe 2 days if you're going to take it steady, 10 miles a day. And that's 2 meals. And I would always carry an extra meal such that if I feel extra hungry, I can stuff my face, and when I get into town, I can then do a basic resupply. The benefit of these Morena and Mount Laguna is that they're basic resupply, so you can top up what you've got. So that's why I can maybe carry a third meal, major meal, like a Mountain House or a ramen. And then when I get to Lake Morena, so I may have eaten, say, 2 meals, one and a half meals to get me to Lake Morena. I would then fill up at the restaurant. So I use the town stops to fill up food, which I didn't have to carry from CAMPO because I know it's going to be waiting there in the restaurant or in the malt shop. And then I also go to the store and pick up a few, maybe extra bit of tuna, maybe an extra ramen, and if they have a mountain, occasionally they have those, but normally it's just the basic resupplies. And then that's enough to get me from the next 20 miles. So I could do maybe a 1.5, 2 days. I've just had a big meal from the malt shop. I may stay over a night. I could even go back in the morning and have breakfast before I head out. And then I've only got another 10, maybe another 2 days up to Mount Laguna. So that's 2 days food plus the extra spare one you've kept if you hadn't eaten it already. And then you arrive at Mount Laguna. And the next stop after that is mile 77. That's Scissors Crossing. So that's what, 35 miles on. So that could be 3 days food. Now you can do a basic resupply at Mount Laguna and also again get a big meal done. So again, this is why I'm using the big meal stop off to the restaurants for me not to have to carry extra food. Now because this is the start, this is what I do. Now later on down the trail I would normally be carrying more ramens and things like this. The start of the PCT is unusual because you have these nice systematic places you can stop at. Further up the trail they get much more spread out. So this is a nice way of starting your PCT. You're not having to carry too much, whereas once you start getting to the more remote areas, then the carry load starts gradually increasing. Okay, now this if you do another resupply, you can get to Scissors Crossing, which lets you into Julian. Now, I know some hikers do like to send a pack to Mount Laguna, and that gives them a nice resupply for 3 days, and that's a perfectly viable thing. Now, the thing is, if you're going to do that, you probably have to do that before you start hiking, for enough time to get there. Just allow a bit of time for the Mount Laguna basic postal service to get there, and also watch the times for the Mount Laguna post office. I personally don't send a box there, but I know some hikers do, and that gives them a nice comfort to get into mile 77 at Julian. Now, once you get to Julian, from my perspective, you could almost be on empty by the time as you're heading down towards this. You could be eating all your final snacks, because you know you're going to go into town. There's a big store. Stores. You've got the gear store, Two Foot Adventures, where you can stock up on all the food. You can do a full gear review and see what you don't need. You've got apple pies free for hikers if you show your permit. We've got lots of stores. It's a lovely town stop, Julian, and that is so. Whenever I know I'm coming into a new town or a major stop town, then literally the night before I'm just eating all my normally stuffing my face, and as I'm heading into town, then I'm probably eating the last of my snacks. So I'm basically not always carrying too much unnecessarily. That's my philosophy anyway. Let's say it's the same, but I think this is where you've got to be careful not to overpack too much. Otherwise, you can end up carrying multiple days' food and arriving in a town that you've basically carried food. Maybe 4 days of food, that you suddenly realize I'm still carrying 4 days of food, and you're in a big town. So keep that in mind. So let's assume now you've got to so you had a big meal at Lake Morena, you've had a big meal at Mount Laguna, you've got to Julian, big town, big resupply, everything. You can start afresh, and you can also think about, do I want to send any boxes from Julian? Now again, be careful, because the next town after Julian at 77 is in 75-80 miles is mile 151.8, which is, as I said, gets you into Julian, gets you into Idyllwild, sorry. But in between, you've got Warner Springs. Now this is where I said at the beginning, before you start hiking, sending a parcel to Warner Springs before you leave CAMPO, or when you're in San Diego, is kind of gives you a nice little boost, such as you're hiking out of Scissors Crossing. It's quite a heavy climb up there. You've got water to carry as well. And you get to Warner Springs, having a parcel waiting there for you means you don't have to carry too much from Julian to Warner Springs. And then you can pick the parcel up, again, watching the postal office dates and times, and then you can use the Warner Springs resupply box that you've sent there to get you to mile 151.8, 40 miles up. And that's a nice strategy. And I've sent, so that's why I actually sometimes send a box from the start, as I said, Paradise Valley Cafe snow gear, and a parcel of a simple sort of nice resupply to Warner Springs to get me through that next section up to Paradise Valley Cafe. It doesn't have to be a big resupply. The reason why is because once you get to Paradise Valley Cafe, you're in the region of you can hitch into Idyllwild, massive town, massive opportunity to resupply. It's not a massive town, but massive opportunity to resupply, gear store, everything. Okay, again, you didn't need to carry too much food to get there. So again, you can regroup and resupply and get back onto the next section. Now, the thing you could do with Paradise Valley Cafe, now you remember I said I'd send my snow gear in and I pack food up. The reason being is sometimes, some years I decide, actually, I'm going to hike up from Paradise Valley Cafe, because I've picked my snow gear up, and use the basic resupply I've carried and get me to Saddle Junction, and then go down to Idyllwild. And in other years, I've sent myself enough resupply with my snow gear to actually take me from Paradise Valley Cafe up to Saddle Junction, up San Jacinto, and all the way over the other side to I-10. That's a bigger resupply, which I'm sure I'll include in the box. So you have multiple options again, but you can use that extra box and the extra resupply which you packed out with your snow gear to basically supplement what you're carrying. So you've got Idyllwild as an option to now stock up. And now the next big section here is, as I said, you'll see here, is Cajon, which is just after I-10, around 210 I think it is. And then you've got to get up to Big Bear. Now, some people just may decide, I'm going to resupply from Idyllwild over to Cajon and then up to Big Bear, and not stop at Cajon. Now, the downside of that is that you've got to carry a lot of the stuff up San Jacinto, which is so basically from Idyllwild up there. I that's probably for me is an unnecessary carry, because what I do is I carry enough just to get me down to Cajon at I-10. I then get an Uber for about $15, literally down the road, down the freeway, to the Dollar General at Cajon. Now, some hikers go into the In-N-Out Burger, some people go further into the Walmart, but it is a perfectly nice setup such that you can get a basic resupply to do the next section up, all the way up to somewhere here, Big Bear. And Big Bear for me is like Julian, major stop. It's like Idyllwild, major stop. Big Bear, major stop. That is where, again, I do a major resupply, and because you've got everything, you've got multiple gear shops, you've got food and everything there, and that is probably where you now start after Big Bear. You're now entering those sections where the things are now much more starting to go much more spread out. So I kind of regroup at Big Bear. I sort of look at my plans and I think, right, the next stop after Big Bear is Cajon Junction, and that's a long way. And Cajon Junction isn't in itself that big a place. It's just basically a junction with, you've got a bit of McDonald's, which is great. You've got a hotel, and you've got various gas stations where you can actually resupply in a reasonable level to get you up to Wrightwood. Now, this is where so I would be doing a big resupply at Big Bear. I normally take a 0 at Big Bear because I like that place so much, and it's just a nice, I've done San Jacinto, I've gone up the Mission Creek bit, which is a bit fiddly and tiring, and Big Bear is a nice big 0 target for me. Now, you may do 0s earlier on, but that's the big target for me. So from Big Bear, I would, from Highway 18, it's mile 266 to Cajon Junction, which is 342. Wow, that's where you're going down Deep Creek. Now, there is a restaurant you can stop off near Highway 173, but I normally just carry on past Silverwood Lake. That's a long haul, so that's probably your first, for me, it was the first real longish section where you have to carry enough resupply to get you to Cajon Junction. And then after Cajon Junction, you may want to stop there overnight because there's a hotel, or you might want to camp just before. And then you've got the long stretch up to Wrightwood, and this is where I think you're probably going to have, currently the way it's looking is, once you get to Wrightwood, you're going to have to come down the trail because that's where the fire closure starts. I'll check it, we'll try and find out the latest of that, but you can certainly get off down to Wrightwood, but you can't continue further. Wrightwood is probably my favourite town of the whole PCT in terms of just welcoming to hikers. Now, I know I'm trying not to do a disservice to every other town that's so wonderful on trail, because there's loads of them at this level, but Wrightwood is kind of just a little bit higher, and it's like Etna is kind of a little bit higher in terms of, for me personally, there are certain towns I just love. Wrightwood is one of them, and you can do, again, if you've resupplied all the way via Cajon Junction, you can top up your resupply at Cajon Junction, get you to Wrightwood, and then that is a major town again in terms of gear store, post office, restaurants and things. Can do a regroup there. Now, this is where I'm not 100% certain yet how to do this because of the fire closure, and we're going to still wait and see, but because you're in a town, whatever the latest news is, you've got every facility around you, such if it's a short hike or if it's a longish hike, you can then adapt because you've got everything in town around you. So let's assume now you can still get to Acton, and then up to Aqua Dulce, and a place called Green Valley, and then there's another place, then you get to Hikertown, and then to Tehachapi. Now, this is where, as I said before, things are getting a little bit more spread out. You have to be a little bit more adaptive. You now have to sort of be flexible in terms of maybe do carry an extra day's food, or maybe 2 days extra food, because if you're delayed slightly, or if you're not going as fast as you can, or fast as you want to, because you haven't got that nice, beautiful, systematic net of towns every 20 miles. That's kind of the places kind of start spreading out now, and by this time you should be, after Wrightwood, you should be reasonably confident now of what you need, when you need it, and where a box could possibly fit in. Now, I don't send any more boxes from Wrightwood, so like I said, my first box was potentially to Warner Springs. My second box, my other box was always to Paradise Valley Cafe with my snow gear, and up until then I won't be using any more boxes. because I personally don't immediately see the need, because I know if I can get to Acton and Aqua Dulce and Green Valley and Hikertown, and obviously to Tehachapi, which is the big town at the end of this section, I can do basic resupplies to get me through. Now, this is where, if you have special dietary requirements, there are opportunities all along the way. You can send a box to Cajon. You can send a box to a Big Bear. You can send a box to the hotel at Cajon Junction. You can send a box to Wrightwood. So there are always opportunities to send boxes there. But the reason why I don't is because I'm trying to avoid being tied to all those places and all the problems around potentially missing times on post offices. But if you're sending it obviously to a hotel or a resort, then you obviously don't have that problem. But yeah, I've been very lucky so far. I've only ever had to let go of boxes, probably once last year and once the year before, you know, because I've either messed up or I'm going too fast, or I didn't leave enough time for the box to be delivered. Yeah, once you start sending boxes, you do tie your itinerary down. But if you are planning stops and you know you're going to stop at a place, and there may be some niceties like your spares box, which is something I tend to sort of maintain bouncing up the trail. Now, I should explain how I make that work. I have most of my idea, because I live locally in California, I send my first real, my bounce box, which is actually, I use my bear can. You can send that priority, and in that I stuff lots of spares, like medical gear, spare things for my phone, like spare cables. It's like sometimes the cable bends or whatever. I have a spare screen protector for my phone, lots of other little knickknacks, and maybe little bit sections of Luca tape. But I also stuff that full of spare food, like the Mountain House and the refuels, which again for me aren't the main meals. They're like treats that I do every so often. I don't have one every night, but I stuff that bear can with lots of things that I know, and lots of snacks and things that at any time I open that, there's going to be things in there I will use, whatever section I'm on. So it's kind of like my reserve, and I then bounce that up the trail and only open that when I need to. So I send it to Big Bear as my first stop, because I know I'm going to do a zero there, and and I can stay an extra day if I need to. I can then open it if I want to, but I would then normally bounce that forward to probably Tehachapi. Some people might want to bounce their boxes to next up to Wrightwood, but I use that implement to it's moving my bear can up trail with all my spares, and then ultimately it will be this last bounce will be bounced into Kennedy Meadows, so it would then be topped up. If in Tehachapi I've opened it, I would then obviously be playing my full resupply for Sierra, sending my bear can into Grumpy Bears at Kennedy Meadows, which has a free collection. Obviously using the full weight capability of my priority mail up to 70 pounds, so I pack my bear can full of all the resupply I want, and then when I get to Kennedy Meadows, I would then use that and then use the local stores to supplement what other things I might need for the first section of the Sierra, which I'll talk about in the next video. But I hope this kind of just breakdown of the first sections here, because they're so close together, you don't need to worry too much. This is where it starts spreading out, and this is where you might want to think about inserting a few boxes, depending on your hike pace. Okay, I hope that initial sort of talk through is helpful, if your hike's coming up, don't forget you should maybe start thinking about where your snow gear, you've got to do this before you hike, or at CAMPO, and also maybe your first box. And as I said, you might want to do one to Mount Laguna, or you might want to do one to probably Warner Springs. I'm not sure you need to do it to both, but again, it depends on what your schedule and hiking style is. Okay, hope to see you on trail, and I'll talk about the next sections of the trail in the next video.